All right, so a couple things here. As you're looking at those, trying to see if you remember what they are. Okay, there's 5 of them, right? Now, if you guys look over to the right, I put up their next test, for red, which is you guys. It's next Friday. So on one positive note, there are 5 things we have to learn. Okay, these are the 5. We're going to learn something about each one. That's the whole unit. So it's not a super long unit, if that makes sense. So next Friday, we'll have another test. Good news for you guys, if you did not like your Unit 1 test score, you have another chance to bring that up. Because remember, your test average is 75% of your grade. Therefore, every time you take another test, if that grade is higher than your average and that average goes up, that really helps your grade. As you guys are going to find the rest of the way out, quizzes are not going to make a huge impact because we've had quite a few now. They're still going to affect it some, but it's going to be a lot harder to change your quiz average because we've had a lot of scores in there. Now, obviously, it's like anything else. If you're really bad average, it's easier to bring it up. If your average is good, it's not as good. But this also plays into why the corrections, even if you make a 14 out of 15, why is it important to do the one problem correction and turn that in? You get another 15 out of 15, which helps your average and makes it harder for your average to go down. Does that make sense, everybody? So even if you're thinking like, oh, that grade was pretty good, if you do the corrections, you still get another total points in there, which helps your overall percentage. Does that make sense? Makes it harder for the grade to go down. So you want to get as many you want to get as many perfect scores in there as possible, even if you already had one. That just gives you more of a buffer if you have a bad score. Okay. All right. So let's look at these. On the first one, do you guys remember what that is? Anybody? Nobody wants to talk on the video? Okay. Let me ask you a question. What do those 2 marks tell you on that first one? Those 2 parts are equal, right? So do you guys agree that's going to the middle of that side? So I want you to write this down. That's midpoint to vertex. You guys with me? So that segment in there is going from midpoint to vertex. So that would be called a median. That's the one we're going to learn about today. Now on the next one, you may have to draw this in. You guys see you have the right angle there? There's supposed to be 2 tick marks on each side of that. So it is actually going that where that right angle is actually a midpoint also. So would you guys agree that that's bisecting that side? It's cutting it in half and it's also perpendicular. That is why that one is a perpendicular bisector. So as you can see, some of these, the names are going to come from what they are doing. Okay, the third one over. At the very top, those are supposed to be 2 angle marks that are saying those are equal. So that's an angle bisector. Here's what we got so far. The first one was a median because it went from the midpoint to a vertex. The second one was a perpendicular bisector because it's perpendicular and it's bisecting that side. The third one is an angle bisector because it is bisecting the angle. The fourth one is an altitude. Now remember, altitude is a fancy word for height. Basically, that's the height of that triangle. It's going from the highest point straight down. That's why it's a height, but it's called an altitude. And then the very last one, now here's why it's confusing with the first one, because it's going from midpoint to midpoint, isn't it? So here's my 2 things you have to keep separate. The very first one we did was a median. It went from midpoint to a vertex. The very last one is a mid-segment because it's going from midpoint to midpoint. Guys, everybody good on those? All right, so today, this is what we're going to find out with all of these, but in particular the median. When it says how many medians can you draw in any triangle, it's the same as the number of sides. There's 3 sides, so there will be 3 medians. Okay, that next term, underline point of concurrency. Point of concurrency is the big picture word. Point of concurrency means that's where 3 lines intersect at one point. So a point of concurrency is if I draw 3 lines, they'll meet at one point. Does that make sense, everybody? Just that idea first. So on number 3, the point of concurrency is that's where 3 lines will meet at one point. And what we'll learn as we talk about each one, those ones that we just looked at up top, the first 4 will have a point of concurrency. They will meet at one point. They will have a special name for each one. So there will be more than one point of concurrency. Each one of those will have a special name. Okay, what is the name of the median's point of concurrency? Write down the word centroid. And we're going to talk about that today. All right, so first off, we're going to fill in some blanks. These are things we've really already talked about, but we're just going to rehash them again. Okay, median of a triangle. Definition is it's a line or segment from the vertex of a triangle to the midpoint of the opposite side. So a median is going to go from a vertex to a midpoint every time. So the endpoints of a median are, what I just said, a vertex and a midpoint. Okay, there are 3 medians in every triangle. So you could draw 3 different medians in a triangle. Because there are 3 sides to every triangle. Okay, once I draw in the 3 medians, they're going to meet at one point. So first, big picture, this is a point of concurrency, but there's other points of concurrency. You guys with me? When I draw the medians in, that is called a centroid. So down there where it says the word centroid, a median's point of concurrency is called a centroid. All right, so the first kind of problem, they might give you a graph, and you have to find the centroid. So first, here's what I want you to think about. Obviously, you know where the vertex of each side is, right? Or each angle. Here's a vertex, correct? Here's a vertex, there's a vertex. So basically, if I'm going to draw in the centroids, what am I going to find for each side? What point? Like, do you know? Well, we know the vertex is here, right? What point is it going to go to on the other side? Midpoint. So basically, you need to find the midpoint of each side. All right, so if I look at this one here, now there's a couple different ways you can do it if you have a graph. If this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what's half of 6? 3. So if I go to 1, 2, 3, my graph is not very good. I'm going to have to cheat a little, sorry. Make it a little more even, so that's in the middle. All right, so if I go 1, 2, 3, in theory, that's in the middle, right? Okay, so do that on your first one down there. So if we're finding the midpoint of the bottom of that on number 1 at the bottom, do you guys agree? I could just, this is 6, 3 would be in the middle, right? So I take that point. Now, if you're going to do this to try to be exact, have some type of straight edge, for this one, you can freehand it. It's going to go to that vertex. So I found the midpoint, and I drew it to the vertex. Okay, that's pretty simple, isn't it? Now, if I looked at this side, I've got 3, don't I? So what's going to be right in the middle? 1.5. So it'd be right there. So now I connect it to that vertex. So at this moment, you should have 2 medians on your paper. Does everybody have 2 medians on their paper? Is everybody good with that? Now, the third one, if I find the midpoint, it should go through that point, shouldn't it? Now, this one is slanted though, isn't it? You guys with me? Now I'm going to show you a trick. There's multiple ways you can do this, but if you have a graph, this is the easiest way to do it. Okay? Here is like this segment goes from there to there. You guys agree with that? So I could do one of two things. You guys agree that from here to here, that's 3, isn't it? So in other words, it's like slope, but this is, we're not using slope. Everybody got that? We're trying to use a distance. But if this is going up 3, how much would I have to go up and then straight over if I wanted to find the midpoint, do you think? What's half of 3? 1.5, right? So if I went up 1.5 and straight over, that should be at the midpoint, shouldn't it? Now, if I'm checking it, guess what should happen? How far was this right here? That was 6, wasn't it? What's half of 6? So if I go over 1, 2, 3 and straight down, I should be at that point also, shouldn't I? Does that make sense, everybody? It wouldn't matter which way you went, but basically, if you're trying to find the midpoint on a graph, if I know it's going up 3, if I go up half and straight over, it has to hit the midpoint. Okay? And now if I draw that in, I've drawn that through the centroid, which is right there, and now we can name that point. Everybody with me on that? So if I look at it, it looks like it is 2, 1, doesn't it? So the centroid of that triangle would be at 2, 1. Thank you very much. Good job, you're here. I'd be jacking everybody up. It would be a negative 2, 1. Thank you. Okay, is everybody good on that, you think? Okay, you guys try the other one on your own here real quick. You guys work it out, and I'll work it out here on the board as we're going. Okay, so here's what I did. You guys agree the bottom is 6. Half of that is 3. So I put a point there at 3, drew that one in. This one is going up 4. Half of 4 is 2, so I went up 2 and straight over to it, drew that one in. This one's still going up 4, isn't it? So if I went up 2 and straight over, boom. Now I'm just guesstimating. If you put something a little different, that's all right, but it's about 1.5, 1.5, somewhere around there. That would be the centroid. Who has a question? Okay, if not, let's turn the page. Okay, now, when you look at this next problem, number 2, it's not a graph, is it? It's listing 3 points and then giving you the point for the centroid. Look at the 3 vertices they give you, and then look at the point of the centroid. Do you guys see a pattern there? Anybody see a pattern between any of those? Let Let me ask you this question. When we were finding midpoint, like on graphs, or finding the midpoint of two points, what's another word for midpoint? It's really the what of the 2 points? It's in the middle. Would you guys agree that'd be another word for average? Okay, look at these 3 vertices they give you up there. If you take, on the first one, 11, 9, 10, 4, 0, 2, if we add the x's up, 11 plus 10 plus 0, that is 21, isn't it? We have 3 points. You divide by 3, and you get 7. If you add up the y's in that first one, 9, 4, and 2, you get 15. Divide that by 3, you get the 5. Okay, and you'll see all of those follow that. So basically, how do you find the coordinates of the centroid? If you have the vertices, find the average. So write the word average down.